Councillor Gary White and Councillor John Tagg. Okay. Has anybody got any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Right. The minutes of the previous meeting, can we move them as agreed? Has anybody got any comments?
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right, then we're probably on to the main body of the meeting tonight now. And it's the North Staffordshire Local Air Quality Plan, the outline business case. I believe Nesta is going to give us a presentation. If I could ask you all to put your questions at the end, and unless there's something that's a burning issue as Nesta's going along. So I'll just mute myself and then...
I am supposed to do an introduction, yes?
Oh, nobody's told me that.
That's right, isn't it, Nesta?
She's muted.
Trying to press the right button. Yes, Trevor, I understand that you are going to do a brief introduction and then I'll follow on from there. Thank you.
Okay, then, sorry about that then.
Not at all.
Okay.
So this is the North Staff's Local Air Quality Plan. The report sets out plans to tackle air quality problems linked to road traffic and nitrogen dioxide emissions. Around 2 years ago, both Newcastle, Stoke and the County Council as the Highway Authority were issued with a legally binding directive to investigate locations where nitrogen dioxide concentrations were likely to exceed the statutory limits and come up with plans to reduce this pollution in the shortest possible time. Our team, headed by Nesta, along with Stoke and the county, have worked incredibly hard. And in the borough, we have identified one location where nitrogen dioxide levels will exceed the statutory limits. This is on the A53 Etruria Road at the top of the bank between the traffic lights at Bassett Park Road and the junction with Victoria Street. Two other locations were identified, both within the Stoke boundary. Since the A53 is a main route from Newcastle to Hanley and vice versa, we have worked together to appraise the problem and identify a solution which will bring pollution levels down below the legal limit as quickly as possible. This report sets out the work done and describes the proposals known as the preferred option. It also sets out the next steps to secure the funding to deliver the preferred option and how we will achieve compliance with the legal requirements that the government have imposed. Now I'll hand over to Nesta and she'll do the nitty-gritty. Thank you, Nesta.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. What we've done tonight, because the report pack is quite substantial, is to prepare a presentation for you to take you through the main points of the project and outline all the matters that Trevor's just raised. So if maybe we could put up the presentation.
Is that sharing? Everyone?
It is sharing.
Yeah.
Could we make it full screen?
Optimize it. Yeah, hang on a second. Get rid of that thing. How does that thing disappear? Just a moment. There we go. Nearly done. And put that on there. Not quite sure how I get rid of those on the right hand side. Oh, there you go. That's how I do it. No, it isn't. Don't know how I do that. Sorry.
Okay then, I'll start first of all by introducing myself. Obviously you're aware that I'm Head of Environmental Health at the Borough Council, but in terms of this joint project which is being undertaken across Newcastle under Lyme, Stoke-on-Trent City Council and Staffordshire County Council, I'm also the Senior Responsible Officer for that. With me tonight is Pete Price, who was just speaking there, and he is the Project Manager for the Air Quality Project. And it has been commissioned to work on behalf of the 3 local authorities that are involved in the project. So the purpose today, Trevor has gone through some of these, but what I wanted to take you through were these 6 points. So I'll cover the legislation and the government requirements for Stoke-on-Trent, Newcastle under Lyme and Staffordshire County Council. I'll then go on and cover the study to date, including all the options identified, the appraisal and the emergence of the preferred option, plus COVID sensitivity testing that's been undertaken. I'll then go on and cover the key decision process and to approve the preferred option. and then look at the full business case submission and funding to government. Following that, we'll go through the process for the funding approval and the implementation of the actual preferred option. And then finally, looking at achieving compliance with the ministerial direction, monitoring, evaluation and decommissioning of the scheme. So I think I most probably covered some of this when I last met with you, but I'll go back. This project originally started in around 2008 when the EU Ambient Air Quality Directive was produced. What that did was that set an assumed safe level for nitrogen dioxide, known as NO2 concentrations, and it set 2 levels. That was an NO2 annual mean value that may not exceed 40 micrograms per metre cubed. That is the figure that is relevant for this whole project. In addition, it also set an NO2 hourly mean value that couldn't be exceeded for 200 micrograms per cubic metre more than 18 times a year. The limit value, when I refer to that or compliance, what I'm referring to throughout the whole of the presentation is the annual mean value that doesn't exceed the 40 micrograms per metre cubed. The Air Quality Directive is based around health. The project is based around health. And in particular, the Royal College of Physicians in 2016 made a statement that every breath we take has a lifelong impact of air pollution. And just to give you some stats, each year in the UK, about 40,000 deaths are attributable to outdoor air pollution, and the economic cost of outdoor air pollution is around 20 billion a year. Contributions to gap in life expectancy of nearly 10 years between the most and least affluent communities. So in terms of NO2, traffic is the main source of the pollution in the urban areas. It's created from vehicles principally. And NO2 has a close correlation with other pollutants, in particular particulate matters at 2.5 or PM 2.5. So the basis of this legislation is all about protecting people's health. So what happened and where did this go to? So in terms of the legislation, the UK had a plan for tackling roadside nitrogen dioxide concentrations in 2015 and 2017. How they tackled this, first of all, in 2015 was by tackling first wave authorities, and those were the authorities that had the highest level of pollution. So Leeds, Birmingham, Southampton, Nottingham and Derby. And you may well have seen in the press recently some details about the sort of actions that those authorities are taking. They then did a second wave, and then finally they've done a third wave, which included Newcastle and Lyme and Stoke-on-Trent. In all, about 60 authorities have been required to develop air quality plans. So how that's been done is that we were issued with ministerial directions, which are legal directions covered under the Environment Act 1995. And we've received 3 of these in total. The first one was in 2018, in March 2018, where we were asked to undertake a study focused on national modelling exceedances purely on the A53, which again was jointly undertaken with Stoke. The outcome of that resulted in 2 further directions being served on us. The first one there is in relation to the implementation of a direction for bus retrofit on the A53 corridor. And that's due to be completed in February 2021. What that means is, and that's only been served on Newcastle and Lyme Borough Council, is that we've had to undertake a project to retrofit the bus engines so that they emit less pollution and effectively work at a higher Euro class than the original specification of the bill of the vehicle. At the same time, we were then issued with a further direction, and this is the purpose of the report today. And that was to undertake a study of all local roads to identify the options which deliver compliance with the legal limit for nitrogen dioxide in the shortest possible time. In relation to that, the legal limit is the 40 micrograms per cubic metre annual average, which I referred to earlier. And the shortest possible time is, as it says, it's got to be delivered as quickly as possible. Following on from that, in terms of that direction, the additional guidance was that we had to undertake a business case which was Green Book compliant, so had 5 business cases. And we had to do 2 things. We had to identify a preferred option, plus compare it against a benchmark clean air zone. And I'll go into detail about what a clean air zone is later. So the study to date, we've been working with DEFRA, or the Joint Air Quality Unit, JACU as they're known, and they've been providing technical support and also funding for the study. In terms of the joint study, Newcastle and Lyme Stoke-on-Trent, we've both been legally mandated to provide this study jointly, and Staffordshire County Council, as the highway authority for Newcastle and Lyme, have also been involved in this project. In terms of this diagram, we've set up a governance arrangement, and you may recall this from the last time I came to you. But we have a joint officer group, which is supported by JACU and also local partnerships who provide project assurance. That feeds into a joint advisory group, which has cabinet members on from the 3 authorities and also directors or chief executives. And then the 3 of those, or that group, feeds into the 3 cabinets. So JACU require the outline business case and the full business case to be considered by Cabinet. And certainly we've all been working together in turn and with respective Cabinet members to take the decisions in relation to the project. So there's been 4 components of the study to date, and I'll update members on each of these in the following slides. So we've undertaken what is called the initial evidence, and that's where we've identified the areas of exceedance of air quality. We've then done some option identification and appraisal, and I'll go through those with you. We've then looked at identification of the preferred option to achieve compliance in the shortest possible time, which is the legal requirement in the ministerial direction. And then, because COVID hit, we've also done some COVID sensitivity testing to see how COVID is going to affect the project moving forward. So I'll take you through each of those particular areas. So in relation to the initial evidence, you'll see and recognise this map. The purple line is the city-borough boundary, and you'll see there A, B and C. In terms of the borough, the A53 is where A is, and the area of exceedance is that very small red line just by where the cursor is. And that's the area between Victoria Street and Basford Park Road. The other 2 areas are within the city boundary, and they're Victoria Road and Bucknell New Road. What you can also see on that map is a number of orange lines, and they're areas where they are at a level of 35 micrograms per cubic metre. And they're quite important because one of the requirements of the project is that we can't make any further exceedances of the legal limit, that magic number of 40, by any of the proposals that we've put in place. So we've had to be very careful when we've been looking at the measures that are implemented, that we haven't displaced enough traffic to make any of those roads that are currently orange into red and therefore exceed. So in terms of the options that we've looked at, and this is covered in 3 slides. If I can take you to the little diagram at the side, first of all, again, you will have seen that before. When I mention clean air zones or CAZs, there's 4 different types of CAZs, A, B, C and D. And what those do is they go through in terms of magnitude as to the type of vehicles that would be charged for entering those areas. So the lowest level of CAZ is a CAZ A, whereby only buses and taxis would be charged for going into that area. Whereas a CAZ D, you would have to consider buses, taxis, HGVs, LGVs, and private motor cars or cars. So in terms of our modelling and what we needed to do to meet that magic number of 40, you can see at the beginning there, the do nothing or the reference case gives us 3 levels of pollutant, which all exceed the 40 magic number. So in relation to the A53, you've got a number of 42.7. So compliance is not achieved by doing nothing. In terms of options, we then looked at a benchmark CAS-D. The reason why we looked at a benchmark CAS-D is that we'd undertaken some traffic surveys, and that showed us that the distribution of traffic wasn't purely in relation to one sector of vehicles. It was a mixed fleet, and therefore we needed to look at all those areas. So a benchmark CAS-D was modelled to see what the outcome in terms of traffic impact and therefore air quality impact would be, taking into account some nominal figures, as you can see in the table there, of charging regimes. As you can see in the right-hand column, the A53, Bucknell New Road and Victoria Road easily achieve compliance. However, a CAS is very complicated and it is slow to deliver. In relation to option 2, we looked at a low impact traffic management scheme. I think when I last came to you, the recommendation of the Scrutiny Committee was that you wanted an option that which was non-chargeable for residents. So we looked at a number of different options which were all traffic related. The first one of these, you can see there in relation to A53, is to look at the Basford Park right turn and banning that turn and seeing whether or not that would be suitable or sufficient on its own to reduce the amount of traffic on the area of exceedance. As you can see in terms of the A53, that doesn't achieve compliance. In addition, you can see there in terms of Bucknell New Road and Victoria Road, again, those do not achieve compliance. So that one didn't meet the criteria. In relation to option 3, we then looked at something which was a higher impact traffic management system, plus a Victoria Road mini CAS. So on the A53, we looked at a westbound peak period bus gate. It's not an actual physical bus gate, it's a virtual bus gate, but it does restrict the type of vehicles that can go through that area. In relation to the A53, you can see there, it is just below that number of 40 and achieves a level of 39.9 in terms of monitoring. In terms of the work proposed on Bucknell New Road, which was bus retrofit, that really is purely a bus related issue. And at Victoria Road and mini CAS also achieves compliance. So this one does fit the criteria for the one criteria of NO2 compliance, but again, because a CAS is involved, it is slow to deliver. Option 4 looked at a high impact traffic management scheme, and you'll see there that this is the core scheme of the preferred option. So on the A53, we're taking on the work that was undertaken in terms of option 3. We looked at a westbound peak period bus gate plus alterations to nearby signals. On Bucknell New Road, we looked at a 75% bus retrofit, and on Victoria Road, again, it was looking at a bus gate plus also a bus retrofit. As you can see from the results on the A53, that gives us a number of 38.9, so therefore is compliant, and equally on Bucknell New Road and Victoria Road, that also achieves compliance. And in terms of timescale for delivery, it's considered that that was fast, and the original estimate was late 2021 to achieve that compliance. We then went back in terms of the benchmark CAS, because the CAS-D, the highest level of CAS, achieved compliance relatively easily. We looked to see as to whether or not the benchmark CAS that we had to compare against could be a CAS-C, i.e. there would be no charge to the private car or any car in relation to it. It would cover the buses, taxis, LGVs and HGVs, but not cars. So we looked at that, and it did work for the A53 and Bucknell New Road, but Victoria Road, there wasn't enough of a reduction in terms of the vehicle fleet. So therefore that didn't achieve compliance and would equally be slow to deliver. We then went on and had a look in terms of option 6, which was a high traffic management scheme, principally the option 4, plus other measures including travel planning, bus route enhancements, electric vehicle charging, vegetation removal on the A53 Etruria Road. As you can see, that did achieve compliance throughout, and for some of those elements have been included in the preferred option following discussion with JACU. In terms of other options, I haven't included them in here, but in Appendix A on page 8 and 9, there were a further amount of hybrid options that were looked at in relation to this scheme, another 6 in relation to them, to narrow down what we could also add into option 4. So I've spoken about the CAS. The CAS would actually need a boundary. So what you can see on the screen is the boundary that would be compliant with the guidance that government has produced for creating a CAS. So there are certain criteria for it, and be the smallest area possible to cover the areas of exceedance, but also create no further exceedances. It couldn't purely be the 3 areas, because as you can imagine, people's behaviours would mean that they would divert away from the CAS and find alternative routes. So that was an area that achieved compliance, and that's the boundary that the option appraisal work was based on. So to go into a little more detail in terms of the preferred option that achieves compliance in the shortest possible time. In relation to the A53, you can see there, and most probably in the little box in the top corner, is the best part that you can see. There'll be a peak period bus gate. There will be signal timings changes, relocation of a bus stop, and then there will also be some bus infrastructure improvements along a whole raft of roads across the borough and the city. This is a slightly more detailed diagram in terms of where the bus gate would actually be located. You can see on the plan, the red box area is where roughly the first picture is, and that's where the bus gate would be. Like I say, it's not an actual gate. It is actually just a signage with ANPR cameras, so it does restrict access to them. The signage would be equally amended on all the routes up to this, so people have a choice to divert their route and go an alternative way. And the part-time bus gate would allow bikes, buses and taxis through it, but no other vehicles. It's part-time because it would be in operation Monday to Friday, 7 AM to 10 AM, 4 PM till 7 PM. The other 2 pictures, I'm sure you're very familiar with the road, but there's the cutting on Basford Bank, and then a picture of the traffic lights, which is where the actual area of exceedance goes. So all that work was undertaken, and we were due to come back to you around May time, and then COVID hit. So in relation to this project in July, the government asked the local authorities to look at the potential impacts of COVID on traffic. I think we can all say that during the first few months of the pandemic, the roads were really, really quiet and things decreased. So what we had been asked to look at is what would be the impacts in 2023. When COVID hit, all this work beforehand was due to happen or achieve compliance in 2022, i.e. the works go in 2021, the first year of compliance would be 2022. When COVID hit, the government asked us or allowed us to look at compliance in 2023. So the work's being undertaken in 2022. So when we've looked at COVID sensitivity testing, what we have added into the modelling is a higher prevalence of home working, including flexible working, lower use of public transport, either due to the requirements of social distancing or changes in the commercial bus network, higher uses of active transport, in particular walking and cycling, fewer business trips due to suppressed economic activity, including the potential impacts linked to higher unemployment levels. And then finally, delayed fleet renewal due to fewer new vehicle sales, resulting in more older and more polluting vehicles staying on the road for longer. In relation to that last point, that is where the 1 year delay comes in, because JACU advised that that fleet renewal would be 1 year. So in terms of the outcome of these results, what we did was we fed all the assumptions in relation to the COVID into the model. And as you can see from the table there, the results in 2022 compared to the 2023 preferred option with 1 year fleet delay still achieves compliance. So basically, in terms of the sensitivity work, the conclusion is that the negative impact of COVID on air quality, due mainly to the fleet delay, is compensated for by a reduction in the traffic, slowing economic growth, and the additional year to achieve compliance. So they balance each other out, really, and the conclusion is that we still need to do something. Unfortunately, the levels aren't such that we don't have to do anything, and the preferred option is still a viable option.
Nesta, it's probably worth just saying, just interjecting there, that all the cities that are doing these studies have had to do this COVID analysis, and the results in those cities are not necessarily the same as the ones that we've found here. For obvious reasons, everywhere is different. Just in case anyone is thinking about, for example, Leeds, who've recently publicised the fact that their proposed clean air zone is no longer needed due to the impacts of COVID. Just because Leeds has changed doesn't necessarily mean that other cities will be able to change as a result of COVID, just to clarify that.
Thank you, Pete. So, in relation to the key decisions, as I said, Cabinet is the decision maker in relation to the approval of the outline business case. So the three authorities are going to scrutiny committees, which have all happened today. So as is the last of those. So the county went this, the county and the city went this morning, and then obviously our meeting today. Those will then go on to Cabinet. Our Cabinet date, I believe, has been amended, and that will now actually be on the 9th of December. The City will go to Cabinet on the 15th of December, and then the County Council will go on the 16th of December. So in relation to the key decisions, in relation to the Cabinet report that you have been asked to scrutinise, there's actually 6 recommendations there, and the first one is the first 2 are the most important for this committee. So Cabinet wants to receive your comments on the North Staffordshire Local Air Quality Plan, and those will be reported into the Cabinet. And then the pertinent one is about the approval of that outline business case. So that is what you'll be asked to provide your comments on, the outline business case. I'll summarise the other ones. They are there in terms of full detail for you. But in essence, recommendation B is requesting the approval of the outline business case. Recommendation C is in relation to receiving a further report on the full business case, which we have to complete, and it is anticipated that that will be in June 2021. Recommendation D is in relation to authority to enter into a 3-way legal agreement between Newcastle Borough Council, Stoke-on-Trent City Council and Staffordshire County Council for operational matters, who will be delivering what, both through the full business case proposal and also implementation and the ongoing life of this project. Item E is in relation to the award of a contract for the consultants to assist in developing the full business case. And then finally is item F, which is for members just to note in terms of the progress which has been made in relation to the bus retrofit scheme, which I mentioned earlier. So moving on to the full business case and funding from government. Once the outline business case, should that be approved, we would need to respond to the government feedback on that outline business case. We would need to finalise and develop that legal agreement in relation to the delivery of the preferred option that I've just mentioned. We need to finalise the commercial and management cases. The outline business case does contain those commercial and management cases, which are in your pack, but they do need finalising. We also need to complete health or impact assessments in relation to health impact assessments, equality impact assessments, and community impact assessments, the latter one being a requirement for the county council only. We need to do detailed design costs and in order to finalise the financial case. And the FBC needs to be completed to go to the cabinet meetings in June and July 2021, with the aim that it is submitted to government by the 31st of July 2021. That's the new deadline that we've been given by the Minister for the completion of or submission of the full business case. In relation to funding, approval in the implementation of the preferred option, the plan is that should the full business case be submitted and be approved, September 2021, we would expect funding approval by government for the implementation of the scheme. Those contracts could be let for the commencement of the implementation, with the preferred option being installed by the end of 2022, ready to deliver compliance with the ministerial direction in 2023. As you can appreciate, the legal requirement is for an annual average. So to enable us to have that annual average, the first full year of compliance would be 2023. The project doesn't stop there. There's then requirements for compliance, monitoring, evaluation, and decommissioning. So as I said, 2023 would be the year where compliance would be achieved. We'd then have to undertake monitoring and evaluation from 2023 to 2026. That involves both traffic and air quality monitoring and evaluation, and quarterly reports being submitted to government. We estimate in around 2026-27 that natural compliance is achieved through natural fleet renewal, resulting in the bus gates no longer being required to deliver compliance in the air quality levels. When we can prove that, there is the potential for decommissioning and removal, and that would be funded by government through the implementation fund. That's the end of the presentation. There's an awful lot of information there. I'm happy to answer any of your queries. Hopefully between Pete and I, we'll be able to answer all of those.
Hey, have we got anybody that wants to raise any questions? Councillor Olszewski.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Nesta, thank you for the very full and descriptive presentation. I've just got a few questions actually. So I understand really, so that to summarise the proposals for Etruria Road, effectively there's the bus gate and the retrofitting of Euro compliant engines to the buses. Am I correct in my understanding of that?
Yeah, two ministerial directions. So the retrofitting is already happening along the A53. So the buses that travel along those routes, it's the routes 4 and 4A, comprises of 25 buses. That work has all been commissioned and it's actually in progress at this moment in time. So the preferred option, it's actually Appendix B in your pack. Maybe I can assist and put that on screen for you, and it goes through the full details.
Okay.
But it is, in essence, the option which would deliver compliance is the part-time bus gate, so the restrictions in the morning and evening peak times, only allowing buses, taxis and bikes to access that road. It would be changes to the traffic light signals and allowing pedestrian access on the two crossings. Bus infrastructure improvement, so improvements across the wider network to try and appeal to more people using the public transport. So in essence, it would be those elements there alongside the bus retrofit that is also happening.
Okay, so in terms of obviously when the bus gate is in operation during the hours you described, 7 a.m. and 10 a.m, 4 p.m. and 7 p.m, a couple of questions around that. One is, how would residents access their properties who live on Etruria Road, is the first question. Secondly, in terms of the bus retrofit, we know that we live in an area with all the bus companies that we tend to get all the old fleet in this area. So how would we measure compliance that there were always buses of the right kind of emissions running on those routes? And thirdly, where would the traffic that would normally go up Etruria Road, where would that effect, where is it anticipated that would be redirected to? Thank you.
Okay then. So in relation to the first question, how would residents get to their properties? They would have to find an alternative route than going westbound. So basically coming up the hill at Basford Bank. So there are a number of alternative routes that would have to be found, and they would have to, in effect, go round and then come back down the A53 in relation to it. So it is a one-way restriction. You can still go down the bank from Newcastle towards Etruria Valley. In terms of the modelling that's been undertaken, that has been quite extensive in terms of modelling all the alternative routes, and we've had to be quite robust in that in order to ensure that not everybody takes exactly the same route, and to ensure that we don't tip into non-compliance on any alternative roads. So, you know, Maybank, Woolstanton, Shelton New Road are all alternatives. That's the first one. In terms of the bus retrofit, in essence, how do we know about those vehicles? I think when I came to Scrutiny before, I did explain to you when we first started the bus project, exactly the situation of what you said happens. Yes, we do have very old buses here, and we did start off in a position whereby the buses to be retrofitted have to meet certain criteria, that they're either on the road for 5 years or 100,000 miles. And we'd struggled to get compliance with that. First have been very good. We have done some manoeuvring of buses. They have found buses that will fit that criteria. So the buses that have been retrofitted will only operate on those routes. And what we are going to do is that as part of the project, there will be very specific branding of those buses, so we can just see that those are the ones that have been retrofitted. Right. And we would like that branding to be consistent across all the retrofitted buses across Newcastle and the city. So we don't have to be doing any more than looking to see. So there are enough buses that have been retrofitted to enable those to run at their peak capacity, and also when there are buses off the road. So yes, it should just only be a visual check, but there's also a legal agreement that underpins that bus retrofit. The third question, sorry, you'll have to remind me what that was, Mark.
I think that's it, Nesta, you've answered it.
Did I answer it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, is there anybody else with questions? Right, Councillor Via.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Councillor Olszewski's questions have answered some of my queries, I must say. I'm gratified to hear that this is going to be one way, because at first I was quite worried about people's access in general at those times, but I think it's the right one way if we've got to have it in that respect. Could I just ask, did I not see something about the removal of vegetation in the preferred option? And I'm just wondering why, because vegetation is usually thought was a good thing in terms of atmospheric pollution. So A, was I right? And B, if I was right, what's the rationale behind that?
Right. If you can recall the picture of where the vegetation is on the canyon, or basically on the hill. In terms of air quality, what you want is good dispersion. So the exhaust pipe is where the pollutant comes from, and what you need is good dispersal of that pollutant. So in that cutting, what you have is you have very high sides, and in effect, you're creating a canyon. And the vegetation creates a top to canopy to that canyon and almost creates a tunnel effect. So in terms of modelling, what you get is an extra accumulation of pollution because it can't disperse. So although, yes, vegetation, you would routinely say, yes, is good for it because it cleans up the air. In this circumstance, you're almost getting a canyon and a tunnel, which is exacerbating the situation. So what we need to do is make it free flowing.
Okay, now I take the point, although it does seem to me rather disappointing that we have to, just like to explore this a little bit more. Are we talking about complete removal then, or are we talking about trimming? Because that bank is going to look very, very different if we take all the trees off there.
I don't think, Councillor Fear, it's been fully determined, and I don't think all the trees could be removed because of slope stability. So I think it will be removal of some, not all. So it will enable the dispersal and most probably the removal of that top canopy, but it can't have all of them removed because of the actual stability of the slope, is my understanding of that.
Okay, that reassures me a little bit. What I think, and I don't know what colleagues feel about this, I mean, I would like to see, I think, the plans for removal, because it's bound to excite comment, I think, from residents. And I think it would be something that we need to have a degree of democratic oversight to.
Okay. Certainly that's something that we can take up in terms of the full business case, in terms of providing that detail, or when I come back to you, I'm sure we can assist there.
Thanks very much.
Any more questions? Okay, Councillor Punter.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My question goes to the so-called bus gates. What sort of monitoring devices are we going to have to catch those that have breached their things, like cameras or what have you? And do we have any in place fixed devices for measuring the air quality day to day? Sorry.
Right. In relation to the bus gate, there is automatic number plate recognition cameras there. So they would be linked to a JACU database, which would determine the type of vehicle, and therefore if there was non-compliance and basically you went through that, then that would be a breach of a traffic regulation order, and the same as anything else that would invert or mean that there was a penalty charge notice for breaching that traffic regulation order. So they are regulated that way, and they would be monitored, and obviously there is an enforcement element to the bus gates. So that was the first point. In relation to monitoring, we don't have a fixed air quality monitoring station at that location. What the requirements are and what the proposal is to use co-located or triple located diffusion tubes. So they are very small little plastic tubes. They're what we use for all our air quality monitoring. They're located around the borough and all around. And in terms of this project, I think we're putting out an additional 100 or so locations of those, so that we can do quite extensive monitoring. What happens is that they are left out. There's 3 in any one location, so you can see any errors in relation to it. They're left out for 1 month, they're analysed by the lab and then replaced, and then you get your 12-month annual average in relation to that.
Okay, fine, thank you.
I will say Stoke-on-Trent do have an automatic air quality monitoring station just in front of the terraced houses, alongside the A53 there, which is just inside their part of the borough. So they do have that, so that data will also be fed into the compliance and enforcement reports.
Okay, thank you.
It's worth adding, Chair, before you carry on with the next question there, that the figures that we've been quoting in the presentation about pollution levels and NO2 concentrations are modelled figures based upon the local air quality model that has been generated for this purpose. Those model figures then have to be validated and backed up by real world monitoring of the type that Nesta just described as we go through the monitoring evaluation process to prove that this has worked.
Fine, thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I noticed that there were traffic calming measures, well, and also noticed that earlier when I was looking through all the information as well, prior in preparation for the meeting today. And I just wondered if you can just explain what they are specifically, just so I'm sure that I understand exactly what that might entail. Because you mentioned that, you know, traffic would have to be diverted along particular routes, and mentioned perhaps Maybank and what have you. And I was thinking about impact on local residential sort of streets and surrounding areas. And I know there's schools along Basford Park Road and what have you. So if we're diverting traffic at those particular times on weekdays, you know, what the implications of that might be.
Yeah, maybe I can assist in relation to the traffic calming. Those elements are in relation to the Victoria Road in the city. So there's a lot of terraced streets around their Busgate area, and a lot of those proposals are in the city. In relation to exact works for traffic calming within our borough, there aren't any proposed. It would just be the normal traffic restrictions. As I'd said, the modelling does show what alternative routes are, and that wouldn't show a further exceedance in relation to those. And everybody would obviously just need to comply with the highway code and you know, general regulations in terms of speed. Pete, were you going to add something to that?
Well, there are two traffic changes, not necessarily traffic calming in the form of road humps, but there are changes to the traffic signals, not the Basford Park Road ones. The next one's along towards Newcastle, the junction with
Sandy Lane.
Sandy
Lane.
Thank you. Yeah, there are changes to the traffic lights there, including pedestrian phase to improve pedestrian crossing there, and also there's a relocated bus stop proposed. There's a current bus stop right within the location of exceedance, and it's proposed to move that further towards Newcastle, basically opposite the New Vic, which obviously there'll be consultation and so on in relation to that, but it moves it away from the exceedance location, thereby easing the traffic flow within that sensitive area.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Councillor Olszewski.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just two further questions. In relation to, we've talked about the additional controls on the traffic lights at the Basford Park Road junction, and Pete just mentioned also at the junction of Sandy Lane. Is it thought that both of those junctions would have kind of like a sort of pelican type crossing?
Yeah, I think in terms of that, the amendment is to add a pedestrian phase into the traffic lights, so it'll enable and support cycling and walking. Yeah. In relation to those elements, make it easier for others to cross that road.
Because I grew up in that area, and I'm old enough to remember that at the Basford Park Road junction, that used to be a zebra crossing years ago. And so obviously that had the natural effect of stopping the traffic. And equally, just coming back on the point really about the additional traffic that would go into Maybank and Woolstanton. We know that the Maybank sort of corridor has always been on the brink of being close to the limits and what have you. And I'm wondering, you know, are we just going to then push that area over the top in terms of its exceedances when we know, and I know Councillor Johnson, who's a resident of that area as well, and don't live far away myself, and we know that that's always been an area of concern. And with the new flyover that comes in from Hanley, which will bring extra traffic as well through up Grange Lane, through Woolstanton and Maybank, and the additional traffic that then won't go up Basford Bank, whether it's just a kind of moving of the problem. I wonder if what kind of modelling's been done to ensure that's not the case.
Right. In relation to the modelling, it has taken into account the Etruria Valley Link Road being installed, and the modelling that, or the predicted traffic movements that would include. So that is included in the model as well, in terms of our baseline model, because in 2023 that's due to be built and imminently opened, is my understanding. In relation to the air quality, in that, well, we've actually got an air quality management area, haven't we? The Woolstanton, Maybank, Port Hill one. In terms of our submission of our annual status report to government, we have been in compliance or quite under the air quality objective level, that magic number of 40 again, for quite some time. So they have asked us to start looking at that, at potentially revoking that area. So with the current levels, any growth in traffic, redistributed traffic from the A53 plus the Etruria Valley Link Road, the modelling that has been undertaken doesn't show an exceedance of that magic number of 40.
Can I just ask how close it is to that figure, Nesta, please?
I'm afraid off the top of my head, Mark, I'd have to come back to you. I don't have the exact figure for that road, but I could quite happily provide that for you.
On the basis that that road is not one of the, if I call them the orange roads, if it's not one of the orange roads on the map that we displayed earlier, it should be reasonably below the 40 limit. But yeah, I think from a point of view of caution, Nesta's approach to just check that is a wise one. So
I can happily provide you with the model data along that route as to what it's predicted to be in, you know, after the preferred option has been included, which would then also include the building of the Etruria Valley Link Road.
I think that would be useful just to reassure residents of both Woolstanton and Maybank.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll circulate that to everybody.
Councillor Hunter and then Councillor Cooper, and then we can probably go to the vote possibly then.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick one. In paragraph 1.9 of Appendix A, mention is made of the ages of the vehicles concerned. How fixed is this? Can it be manoeuvred before implementation, or is this already decided?
You'll just have to forgive me while I just have a quick look at that particular paragraph. 1.9.
Yes, in case of car.
Right, okay, then that's in relation to the date of the Euro classification of engines. Yeah. That is the latest date. So providing you are in compliance with those, then you will have that Euro 6 or Euro 4 type engine. Some particular makes had done that before. So to be absolutely sure, there's a website where you can do a vehicle checker on your registration to see whether or not, or what Euro class the vehicle is in. But rule of thumb is, providing you are, you have a vehicle that is registered, on those dates, it will at least meet that standard. Some manufacturers did it sooner.
I just realised, because my car is in fact a 2006, but it's had a 2009 engine fitted in it. So hopefully I should be okay, but I can feel sorry for some people.
Just to clarify, the Euro classifications, Councillor, relates to the clean air zone proposals. The Euro classifications don't affect the busgate proposals within the preferred option. So if we were going down the route of a CAS, a clean air zone, then you know, everyone would need to take great interest in when their vehicles were registered and whether they fall within the compliance or not. But it's not a factor for Stoke-on-Trent and Newcastle if they go forward with this thing that we've called the preferred option.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation, sorry if I've missed something here. But when you were just mentioning the Port Hill and Woolstanton and Maybank, that's currently being monitored, and that, you know, because the levels have been below quite low for a while, that may stop. And then obviously this new scheme may cause an increase in traffic in those areas. If it's not on one of those orange routes as you described on the map, that wouldn't necessarily be an area that you would be monitoring, am I correct in saying? So the scheme would come to an end, that it wouldn't be monitored because it isn't orange, but that might not be very reassuring to local residents. And it is quite busy around there as it is, you know, when you're walking on the marshes, there's lots of dog walkers, lots of families, you know, using that area, and, you know, increases in traffic are always a concern, aren't they, in terms of health. That's the reason this is being done, but you know, it moves it to that residential area.
Yeah, maybe I can assist in relation to the two schemes that we've spoken about. They are both air quality, but they're both slightly separate to each other, and they both have different criteria. So this work that we're doing in terms of the study for the local air quality plan has a measurement point basically at the road edge. The other work that we undertake in terms of local air quality management, that's routinely and regularly reported into Licensing and Public Protection Committee. We have a slightly different criteria. The legal limit is the same, but in terms of the measurement criteria, that's slightly different. That is determined at a relevant location, and a relevant location is considered to be a domestic premises. So you are moving further away from the centre point of the road. So we have monitoring up in terms of local air quality monitoring throughout the whole of the borough. So we cover areas in Loggerheads, Betley, Madeley, all sorts of areas, because we have to cover the whole borough to ensure that there aren't any exceedances. So the two regimes have slightly different criteria. So we have tubes out, and they can be used to inform one another, but in terms of if we were modelling the two, we would have to model them slightly differently, which is why there's a differential between the two areas. Hopefully, without getting too technical, that makes sense.
Councillor Olszewski.
Yeah, just last one from me, just absolute clarification, Nesta, so I've got this right. So in terms of the bus gateway, that will run from the bottom of Basford Bank, the MFI roundabout, through to the Borough Arms, basically, in one direction.
Yeah, in essence, the bus gate is at the MFI roundabout. That is the point of control. So any roads feeding into it after the ANPR cameras off the side streets would be able to travel up that bank. So it's only where you are coming off the MFI roundabout to that point. So that is the only point where there will be the virtual bus gate and the cameras for enforcement. So if anybody joins after that, they can still travel two ways. It's that first point. By restricting the amount of traffic off that roundabout, and we appreciate that that's going to be very, difficult and inconvenient for people, but by restricting it at that roundabout, it achieves compliance further up the road where we need to. And you have to give people a choice. So there they've got the choice to divert in an alternative way, whereas if they were coming up the bank, they wouldn't have anywhere to go other than turn round. So
right, so it would be quite in order, for example, to go up Shelton New Road as an alternative and turn right into Hayden Street or Gladstone Street and come out onto Etruria Road.
Yep, fine, no problem.
Okay.
Can I just ask Nesta, before we go to the recommendation, are we able to do that taking into consideration Councillor Fear's concerns about the vegetation?
In terms of that, Councillor Heason, obviously the outline business case is the principles of it. The full business case covers the exact details of everything that is going to be covered. So I'm happy that we would be able to take those comments into account, and when I come back to you, we can give you more details in relation to that and ensure that it is included in the full business case. Okay. So I'm happy to take that into account and give those further drawings, because as I said to you, in terms of this phase between the outline business case and the full business case, we've got to do full design surveys and specifications. So we would then have the plans, because the idea is at full business case, you're almost shovel ready to deliver the scheme. So therefore, those plans would be drawn up in terms of that work.
Okay, right, we appear to have lost Councillor Fear. Can I ask everybody else if they are happy to go with the recommendation that we've heard tonight? If you could put your hands up if you're agreeing it.
I've got to, oh.
Is it a bit late? Is it relevant?
So I'd done my raised hand a bit on the, doesn't matter.
All right, okay. So
I'm just seeking clarification because I'm now confused. So we're saying if we're coming from Festival Park, we can go to MFI roundabout. Then can we proceed up the hill to Basford Park? Because I thought our discussion was about the implications on Will Stanton and Maybank. But if we can't get up that section from the roundabout to Basford Park Road, then how does that affect Maybank and Will Stanton? Because we've got to go on the D road, haven't we?
Yeah, in terms of that, Marion, the preferred option as set out at that MFI roundabout, there would be a restriction on access to only allow buses, taxis and cycles to go through that route from 7 till 10, and the 6 hours during the peak flows during the daytime. So if you were a private car owner and you wanted to go from Etruria up into Newcastle at 9 o'clock in the morning, you would need to find an alternative route,
which would have to be the A500.
That if you were going there, or you would find an alternative route further back, wouldn't you, depending on where you were going.
Okay, are we all happy to go for the vote now? Yeah, so if we're all, or anybody that agrees with the preferred recommendation or the recommendation that's been put before us tonight, can you please vote with your hands up? Okay. Yeah, I think that's unanimous. Okay, so that can go forward to Cabinet to consider. Okay. Have we got any public in here? The next thing I've got in here is public question time, but I've not been made aware of any. No. Okay. I've not been made aware of any urgent business. So thank you for attending, and the meeting can now close. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.